It was great to speak with Paul McGreal on this evening's ARI podcast. He is a poignant figure in the adventure racing community, known for his dual role as a seasoned racer and an experienced race director. He's had many races under his belt over the years, doing mountain marathons, adventure races, orienteering races, and many, many more. Last race was the raid in France, and he's gearing up now to join us for the Beast in Carlow this year. Beyond his athletic endeavours, Paul is the managing director of Durty Events. This company specialises in adventure races and multisport events. He's also been instrumental in directing the ITERA expedition race, which is a challenging event and is part of the Adventure Racing World Series for 2025. Also, while holding this event in 2025, he will also be holding the ITERA Lite race beside it, which is a great option for those who are not looking at doing the expedition length races. Without further ado, I'd like to get into this chat with Paul now.
There we go.
Hello, Paul. I'm delighted to welcome you on the ARI podcast today. You can see here I'm all ITERA'd up for you.
Beautiful. We like it. We like a bit of branding.
Yeah, a bit of branding here for you. I suppose just to introduce you to those that maybe aren't familiar with the team adventure racing side of things, and that are the solo adventure racers and that would be listening to the podcast. You are a racer yourself, a team expedition racer yourself, and you are also the RD, the race director for ITERA, ITERA Lite, and obviously the expedition version of ITERA as well.
Sure.
So I suppose if we kick off first, how did you get into adventure racing, team adventure racing, and where did it all spark for you?
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's a great question, and it goes back a long way, really. You can probably trace the roots back to orienteering. So I started orienteering when I was about 13, something like that, which is a very, very long time ago now.
It's not that long, Paul. It's not that long.
So that was, there was an enthusiastic geography teacher at school who would take us away in the minibus for the weekend, and it kind of clicked for me. I mean, I wasn't a sporty kid by any stretch of the imagination, and my family are not particularly sporty either. But there was some, so I wasn't good at team sports, and I don't have hand-eye coordination, so I was rubbish at all of that stuff involving balls. But running and in particular kind of orienteering really just kind of flicked the switch for me. So that became a bit of an obsession, and that led through people that I met in orienteering into kind of hill races, and eventually, fell races up in the Lake District on the west of England. We would travel up and down to go to those races, and that led to mountain marathons. So me and my pal Stodge, we did the Saunders Lakeland Mountain Marathon when we were both 16.
Wow.
I suspect that we're probably still the youngest team to ever have done a mountain marathon. I suspect. I can't be asked checking, but I suspect that's true. And so that, there was that in the background. And then there was a bit of a lull, a bit of a pause, but I kind of late when I was late 20s, something like that, I started to pick stuff up again and went orienteering a bit more, and adventure racing kind of entered my consciousness. I think I've got mates from school days who've done Eco Challenge. I was vaguely aware of this thing existing, but kind of no real idea of how to get into it. And then when I moved to Scotland, I became aware of a kind of a legendary race that doesn't happen anymore called the Hebridean Challenge.
Yeah.
It was effectively it was a 5.5 day stage race through the incredible kind of Outer Hebrides off the west coast of Scotland. And some mates and I, we kind of all had that, wouldn't it be great if, and actually did something about it. So we went and raced that early 2000s. We did that. I think I did that 3 times. And that was kind of it, really. I was kind of hooked. So in a funny kind of way, I would say I've been adventure racing kind of forever,
Yeah.
and probably even from when before, when it was called adventure racing, when it was orienteering and mountain marathons and, all that stuff. Um, so yeah, so I was, did the Hebridean Challenge when was that, early 2000s, and then kind of came back to it a little bit later on again when my friend Rosemary Bide phoned me in 2012 and said, I've just joined as a last minute replacement for an ITERA team. What the hell's ITERA? Um, and they're looking, somebody else has now dropped out. Do you know anybody who might step into the team? So I think Rosemary probably knew me well enough that I would probably say yes, and that was it. So I raced 2012. So here we are.
Hmm. So I suppose just in terms of the orienteering that you would have done when you were younger, Paul, and bringing obviously that into the adventure racing, it's a very nice tool to have in your back pocket from a navigation point of view.
Yeah,
Orienteering is a great place to kind of start off, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, I get folks asking me occasionally, how to get into adventure racing, and what's the pathway here, and the answer is always broadly the same. Go out and do stuff. But
Mm.
definitely find your local orienteering club, join up and go to a handful of their events because they're very welcoming. I mean, orienteering
Yeah,
kind of,
understand.
is pretty low key stuff. I mean, it can be a little bit rules obsessed at times, and you've got to get beyond that. But you learn so quickly about navigation in that kind of context. It's pure navigation.
Yeah,
Within a handful of events, you've probably learned all the navigation skills you're likely to need for adventure racing, certainly to get you round. The subtleties that are seen by the really great navigators in the sport are clearly another step or two beyond that. But to acquire or to begin to acquire those skills, absolutely go find your local orienteering club. It's dirt cheap to go and do. It's great fun. You'll explore bits of the country that you've never seen before, and you will acquire navigation skills really quickly.
yeah, I think it's great. I still do a bit of orienteering and I enjoy it because you're really at the nooks and crannies of it. It really draws you in. And
Yeah.
there's some of the Cork lads that put out the courses. You kind of nearly even know who put out what course. If you didn't, if
You
you did,
start to learn the
you
style of
really
the
do.
mapper and the course plan and all this bit.
Yeah,
If you can do it at that micro level where you're searching for a boulder that's less than a meter high or a little
yeah,
kind of re-entrant valley that's teeny weeny in the forest, if you can do it at that micro level, you
yeah,
can absolutely do it at the macro level of adventure racing. And there are orienteering events near everybody.
yeah.
They're all over the place.
Yeah, and they're great because they cater for all. So they have the really short ones. I'm sure it's the same in the UK, Paul. They have the really short ones here. Like there's I think 6 different variants of the
All
same
right.
race. Yeah, that you can
Yeah.
do. So you can do like a
Something for
3K.
everyone.
Yeah, exactly. There's something for everyone, and great opportunity to get people out and about as well, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's that it's a little not in adventure racing clearly or in orienteering, but that ability to navigate using old school skills and map and compass is a little bit of a dying art here in the UK. I don't know what it's like
Mm,
in Ireland, but people are kind of so used to using mobile based apps and all that kind of stuff that the paper map and compass skills are disappearing, and I think that's concerning
yeah,
because it feels like it's one of those skills that's essential. It's an essential life skill. But also, I'm a great believer that every adventure starts with a map.
yeah.
Um, it's kind of almost impossible to have an adventure without knowing something about how to go out and, how to go out into the wilderness or the countryside or whatever it is. So yeah, it opens so many doors. It opens so
Mm.
many doors.
I always find it amazing, here, if there's, kind of like a mountain marathon on or whatever, it's amazing to see when you go up north, for us, let's say, which is only 4 or 5 hour drive, and you go up into the Mourne Mountains. And they come out of the woodwork up there, like between the score event and the 3 options on the 2 days for the mountain marathon up there. There are navigators all over the shop. And you're just there going, lads, have you heard of adventure racing? Come
Yeah,
on,
come on over
come
here. Come
on.
and have a look at this. It's a natural. I would think it would. Yeah, orienteering would be a natural recruiting ground for
Yeah,
adventure racing for sure,
yeah,
because some of those
yeah,
skills already exist. Yeah.
yeah. So you went off and you did ITERA in 2012. How did you find that experience?
I absolutely loved it. I mean, it was a very different experience to the kind of the previous experiences I'd had at the old Hebridean Challenge, because the Heb stopped every day. So you did kind of, and it was this ridiculously complicated race. It was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. But you stopped each day. And I was with a bunch of mates, whereas I kind of stepped into a team where I kind of half knew Rosemary and I didn't know the other two guys, into this massive thing that I didn't really understand. I didn't quite know what I was biting off. I had some idea, but I didn't really know how this was going to pan out. And it was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. We got to see some places that I would never have been to before. I got some experiences that there's no other way to have. And what are we now, 13 years on? I remember a lot of that race vividly because it was so intense. And even now when I'm kind of wandering around bits of Scotland, it's like, oh yeah, we were here. Yeah, we kayaked down here, and oh yeah, we crossed the road here. Those memories are really fresh and really vivid because it was such a great experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I absolutely loved it. So I came back in 2014, did ITERA again in 2014. That was the one in Wales, where, I mean, I don't think anybody really expected that course. It was an incredible course. I don't, did you do that one? I don't know.
No, no, no,
No,
I didn't do it. Well, no,
it
I've
was,
that one though.
yeah, it was based in Cardiff.
Mm,
And at the map reveal, we all kind of realised that we were actually starting on the north coast of Wales, and so the race was basically the entire length of the country, and it was fabulous. It was
mm,
fabulous. I kind of got my head into it a little bit by then. Clearly, I knew a little bit more about what to expect, and the team I was with, I knew more of them. And we knew each other's strengths, and we approached that one in a slightly more strategic kind of way. We knew, for example, that we were stronger on bike than we were on foot, and the nature of the ITERA format means that you can bias the checkpoints that you select to go to towards your strengths. So we looked kind of 3 days down the course and saw bike checkpoints. We'll do those. We'll shortcut until we get to that point, but then we're going to go and hoover up everything in the second half of the course. And we had a great time. We felt like we were racing.
yeah,
We had a purpose. Yeah, loved it. Absolutely loved it.
yeah. And you've obviously done some international races. I know recently you've done the raid in France.
Yeah.
Um, Anything else that kind of, how did you find that one?
Yes, I did raid in France last year. It was a fascinating race. It was different to anything I'd seen in the UK. Um, in that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've only done the one raid in France. I don't know whether they're all like this. I'm told they are.
Yeah,
That they're very technical. Um, uh, and yeah, it was. We were in this forest. We were in a forest for 6 days. We kind of hardly ever emerged from the forest. I felt like a kind of a woodland creature by the end of it. But the navigation was off the scale for an adventure race. I mean, for orienteering, it was fine, but there was so many decision points. There was so much route choice, and navigating all of that network of that labyrinth of forest roads and tracks and trails and things through the forest kind of had to be on. We were making navigational decisions every 300 or 400 meters. It was, I mean, really intense. And I finished the race physically okay, but it took me days, weeks to recover mentally, actually,
yeah,
because it was such, I mean, the focus was so intense. Um, Transition areas were really basic. That's something I'd not seen in UK races before. It was a lay-by at the side of the road in some cases. We did the sleeping in ditches thing. We ticked the other adventure racing cliche of persuading some slightly bemused house owners to let us into their house for a few hours for a kip. That was great.
yeah.
They didn't speak any English. We didn't speak any French. It was just a brilliant cultural exchange. Um, but yeah, all in all, that was fantastic. A really different experience, and getting your head around maps, that don't look like the maps that we use at home. Yeah, that was, I mean, yeah, I knew that was coming, but it was quite a challenge. I did the Faroes race in
Oh,
2023, which was, I think, a bit of a bucket list for quite a lot of adventure racers.
yeah.
When that popped up, the team I'd raced with in 2014, We kind of all clearly had the same light bulb moment, and there was a bit of an exchange on our messenger group or whatever it is. You know, look at this. Wouldn't this be cool? And it was. I mean, what a place the Faroes are. If you've not been,
Oh,
go.
have to go.
Go. It's just spectacular. But it's a country that's out to kill you. You know, it's either, you know, it's just so extreme.
Mm,
And the opportunity to race in that environment was such a privilege. It really was. It's properly, you know, unspoiled and remote and adventurous.
yeah.
Um, and it was, you know, it really felt like, you know, this is a race on the edge. So that was a lot of fun. Despite the fact, as it turned out, I felt crap throughout the whole thing. It turns out I had COVID throughout the whole race. My
Oh,
team, my poor teammates basically dragged me around the course for 5 days. You know,
oh,
Rosemary, I was hitched to the back of Rosemary for days at a time. So,
oh my
so it
God.
was a hell of a burden on them. It was awful. And that manifested itself mainly whenever I exerted. It manifested itself as vertigo, which was really handy in that environment.
Oh my God, because that is so steep and the
Well,
cliffs are so sheer, like.
I mean, unusually they required us as mandatory kit on most stages, foot stages. We had to have an ice axe. You know, there was no
What?
snow, but because the slopes were so steep and
Yeah,
grass, you know, they're kind of grass and then a crag and then grass and then a crag.
yeah,
And I guess, you know, if on wet grass, once you developed a slide, I guess the thinking goes, you wouldn't stop.
yeah.
It's steep. It's that steep. But what a beautiful
Crikey.
place. What a beautiful place. So yeah, raced a little bit overseas.
Yeah, yeah. And if I'm correct in saying, Paul, do I remember something about you having to go to a hut to get part of a map for that one?
Oh, there was a
Or
really cool little section. Maybe the thing you recall, there was a really cool little kind of special stage section that there was a jump off a cliff into the sea, like a 10-meter jump, and then there were a couple of underwater checkpoints.
okay.
And they released, once you'd got those, you were given the map for the next set or
That
the
yeah,
next stage.
yes.
Um, because up to, you know, the paper maps had like a big overprinted block. You couldn't see what was underneath it.
Yeah.
So you had no idea what you were going into. What they gave you was this beautiful, it's on my desk next door, this beautiful 3D carved wooden map.
That's it. Yes, that's it.
Is that the
Yeah.
thing you were thinking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing I'm thinking about. I didn't realize you had to jump off the cliff though to get it.
Yeah. In order to kind of release it effectively, you had to get
Yeah.
these two underwater checkpoints, jump
Okay.
off the cliff and down. But yeah, and this fantastic wooden map about this big,
Wow.
and maybe 2 or 3 centimeters high, something like that. So you know you were literally navigating by feel for that stage,
Wow.
including to the top of the highest mountain, possibly
Yeah.
in the Faroes. But yeah, you know it's a brilliantly done thing. You can feel it was just so accurate. You could feel the notches and the ridges and all those kinds of things. It was, I mean, a lot of fun. Great fun.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yeah.
What a brilliant idea.
Yeah, yeah. I think, it's great when you go to races and there's little quirks or little things like that. It just, it's just they interest you. They ping a bit of an interest, don't they? It's
Yeah, there's a fine line sometimes, I think, because yeah, I agree totally. You
yeah,
know, there's a fine line, but sometimes there's kind of like, these slightly kind of weird corporate-y, you know, team building exercise. I'm not into all that. You know,
yeah,
we don't do that ITERA because I think that's just a bit
yeah,
cheesy.
yeah,
Each to their own and all that, but I
yeah,
wouldn't do it. But yeah, those
yeah,
kind of little kind of quirks, and as a race director, you're always looking for those opportunities to, what would be a bit different, but not kind of a bit naff here. You know, what
yeah,
would be fun, but it's about responding to. I mean, I think it's about responding to the location. You know, what would work in this context. You know, what's going to be interesting here. Because one of the things we're always trying to do is I think of adventure racing as a little bit of it's like a guided tour
mm,
from a knowledgeable whatever, so it's kind of, come over here, we know something, come and have a look at this is really cool over here. You'd never find it yourself, but we found something really cool,
yeah,
and we're trying to take you to those kinds of places. So I think Gary and Adam managed that spectacularly in Wales last year, in
yeah,
Snowdonia, Erie. They just found some just incredible corners, fascinating parts of the country
Yeah,
that you wouldn't have a reason to go to otherwise, but had a value. They absolutely had a value. So we're always trying to do that.
yeah,
What is it about this place that
yeah.
makes it special? Let's go there.
Yeah, like that valley, I think, was it on the last day we were coming in. We went down into this valley and there was like loads of old houses in this valley. And
Okay.
they were just amazing. Do you know what I mean? And most of the people that when we were racing it, they had gone, let's say, up to the right, and we were kind of trying to short course down through the forest. So we went up to the left, and as we were going down, there was more houses and old cottages that were overgrown and taken back by the earth, like, you know. But it was just amazing to think at one point this was some sort of a village or something. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
it's been long abandoned.
Long abandoned, and it was just amazing to see it,
A
you
lot.
know.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff in Scotland as well, and it's kind of related to a lot of it is related to the Highland clearances. So
Yeah,
entire villages were removed from the land in order to kind of generate grazing land for sheep.
yeah,
And so you do come across a lot of these old sheilings and buildings in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, my imagination works in the same way as yours. Obviously, I can't, what would it have been like to
yeah,
live here? There's
yeah,
nothing. There's just nothing. Why? Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
And like this old road with the houses at either side kind of ended up tracking us back up to this new road that was the forestry road. And
Nice.
I was just there going, this is bloody amazing. Like it was just so cool, really cool. And you're just trying to figure out what kind of life were they having here? Was it wet then? Anyway, I won't go, but you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
mad, like
Yeah, I think Gary and
absolutely
Adam
mad.
did a spectacular job on all that last
Yeah,
year. And
yeah,
all that, Wales is an industrial landscape, and we wanted to reflect that in the course, which
mm,
is why we took you into those fantastic, spectacular, huge quarries and along the tram lines, and we're trying to say we're trying to give you a flavor of this is what this is the
yeah,
place you're in, a sense of
yeah, yeah.
place. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, yeah. There was a nice hike a bike, all right. Yeah, in one of the
Oh
minor
yeah,
runs. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Bit
out of
epic, epic.
I don't know the name of the place, but I know exactly where
Yeah,
you mean.
yeah.
The guy
It was
recce'd
very
that
good.
bit.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
it was cool. It was really cool. We were there with the all female team at the time. Oh
right.
my God. And we were pushing our bikes up and they were just eating the ground up. They were brilliant. They really
Fantastic.
gave it welly. Yeah, it was
Fantastic.
amazing. Um I suppose that brings us nicely on, Paul, to your I suppose doing racing ITERA, and now stepping in and deciding to take that role over. I suppose maybe if you give us the transition of how that worked between yourself and
The legendary James Thurlow.
Jane. Yes.
The
How did
legendary James Thurlow.
how did
So,
that all happen?
well, I'd got to know James through, going to his events, got to know James a little bit. And by then I was running, I have a company in Scotland called Durty Events, and we organize events. James, I think, had a tough time of it in the 2016 race in Ireland. I think
Yeah,
that it was very weather affected. I wasn't there at that one, but I gather it was
yeah,
very weather affected, and it was
yeah,
pretty stressful for everybody, I believe.
yeah,
I think James came out of that saying, "Nah, I'm done now. That's enough for me." And so that was it. And I think there was an announcement at the time that was the end of ITERA. And I thought, like everybody else, well, that's a shame, because I know that we've still
yeah,
got locations in the UK that would support that event. But I respect James's decision. It's not easy. It's not easy being an RD, especially of these long races. It really isn't. So I get it, but I kind of went away and thought about it, and I thought it is a real miss that we don't have that race in the UK. There's a reasonable number. We're not when of races in the UK. We're not as well developed as you are in Ireland, although I think that's starting to change. There's a kind of a embryonic adventure racing association coming together over here as well, and hopefully that'll generate some growth. But I still thought, there's a lot of races in the UK. It's a shame that we've lost this thing. Tom Gibbs, who I'm sure you know, Tom, kind of UK, been around the adventure racing scene forever, won the world champs with Nick Gracie et al. 2009, I think that was. Anyway, so Tom was obviously having similar thoughts. So Tom and I discussed it and went to James and said, look, okay, we think it's a shame, but we understand your decision. However, look, if we came in with you and said, we'll split the load here, would you consider starting it again? And James thankfully said yes. So with the three of us ran the event in 2019. That was Inverness. We ran the event in 2022, which was Oban. And then at that point, James said, no, that definitely is it now. So there had been a transition phase, but we'd known that day was coming for a while. And I mean, my concern was that, James had created that event, had done a really, really good job of designing it and pulling that thing together and making it happen. And he had the credibility. I didn't have the credibility. That was my concern at the time. I couldn't have just started being the RD because why would any of you trust me? You don't know who I am. Why would you trust that I was going to do a decent job of this? It's a hell of a commitment to enter a race financially and time. Most teams, I guess, only race once or twice a year. So kind of choosing our race or any given race, you've got to have a good reason for that. And I thought I don't have the credibility. So there was a plan throughout 2019, 2022 that Tom and I would build some credibility and we'd become a bit more visible, ready for when we took it on. So that was kind of the transition. But there was a little bit of a twist in the tail. And this is, bear with me, we'll get back to the point in a moment. So I was sat on the side of, did you do the 22 race, the one that started on Iona?
No.
No.
2023.
You did 23 in borders,
23.
yeah.
Yeah.
22 was the kind of the 5-day, 4-day race. And the first proper leg was this spectacular kayaking stage that we never thought we'd be able to make work, but we did because the weather smiled on us that day. Started on Iona on the beautiful sandy beach, up to Staffa, and then headed east into a place called Grulin Bay on the Isle of Mull. So I'm sat on the Isle of Mull with Igor Dodotic from Adventure Race Croatia. He was the race referee. And we were discussing kind of future ITERAs and what the plans were. And look, ITERA happens every 2 years. It's such a big event. We can't do it. It can't be more frequent than that. So the big ITERA race is every 2 years, and that's the pattern that James had established. And I was saying to Igor, but I can't do it in 2024. I was involved in organising the World Orienteering Championships that year. I had enough on my plate. So it's going to be 2025. I can't, and that feels like a really big gap until the next one. So Igor suggested, well, why don't you do a short one next year? Why don't you just do a 48-hour, 2-day race? And there was okay, yeah, we could do that. And if we did that where I live, then I know most of the route already, and we can make this happen quite quickly. So that was where ITERA Lite was born. It was born on a sunny day on the side of Grulin Bay on Mull with Igor from Croatia. That's kind of where that idea came from. So 23 was the first one that we ran on our own. And then, did 24, which was in, Erie, Snowdonia last year. They were both the 2-day ITERA Lite format. And then we were always going to return this year to the kind of 4-5-day thing. But I've been surprised by the take-up of that ITERA Lite race, the 2-day race. I think we got a really good entry for that last year. I was slightly taken aback.
I mean, I think Paul, you got, and like I did it in 23. I thought you had great entry for 23 as well.
Yeah, did all right in 23.
Yeah, you had good numbers.
Yes.
And a good Irish contingent went over in
Oh, yeah,
23.
which has been fantastic. The Irish have
Yeah,
totally supported what we've done, which
yeah.
frankly has made the difference. That you've come over in such numbers that you've helped make that event viable, and and a better place for us all. So that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
So where was I going with that? Oh yeah, so the light thing. So it kind of occurred to me that this wasn't just a throwaway stopgap solution to get us through to 2025. That actually there was a bit of a demand for that kind of event. both as a kind of an end point in itself, I'm sure there are lots of adventure racers who don't want to race for 4 days or 5 days, and actually 2 days is more than enough. Great. But also as a stepping stone.
Mm.
In the UK, we've got a bunch of really, really good 5 hour races. So the likes of Questars and Burn, and there's an Open 5 race as well. So there's a bunch of those kind of 5 hour races, but then there's nothing else. How do you get, as an adventure racer, how do you get from a 5 hour race to a 5 day race? So it
Mm.
felt like ITERA Lite had value in itself, but it also had value as a stepping stone, which is why we decided to run both this year. In the
Mm.
ITERA Lite has a value. So that's kind of, yeah, that's the history. It's kind of why we've ended up where we've ended up this year in terms of both races happening.
And I think it's like it's such a great option to have that 2 day race, that 48 hour um there, just to kind of give, as you rightly say, it just means you're not on. It's still a challenge, but without it being an expedition, where you're gone for 5 days. You can do it over a long weekend. You're not
Correct.
looking, it can be a really good warm up to something bigger later on in the year. Like for Canada, I'm sure a lot of people will be using both the Light and the Expedition ITERA as, a warm up
Well, of
for
course,
Canada.
we saw that with Swedish Armed Forces last year in
Yeah.
Wales. They they came as a warm up for the World Champs last year.
Mm,
And what a privilege to have, that team,
yeah.
at that point, the world champions at that point, come and race our little race in the north of Wales. It's great. Yeah. So, yeah, that 2 day format, you're right. I think that, for many people, that's enough. You'll get plenty of adventure in 2 days. And as you say, it can be done in a long weekend. So
Yeah.
I think that format is probably here to stay.
Yeah.
I mean, the 4 and 5 day format clearly has a place as well, because we need to, people need to qualify for the World Championships, and you know, some people, me included, I quite like that long, the long stuff. I feel I get stronger as an event gets longer,
Yeah.
and so that format works for other people as well. And that's one of the beauties of the sport, isn't it? Is that
Yeah.
it's all of those things.
Yeah, exactly. And
It's
it's
all
just
of
gives
those things.
people the opportunity. Like, one of the biggest things I would hear people say, "Oh, I could never do a 24-hour race." And then they do a 24-hour race and it's, "Oh, I think that's it now. I don't think I could do any more." But getting that option to do a 48-hour is
Yeah,
really, really good, because it just goes to show if you can do 24, you can do 48. And if you want to, obviously, then you can do those 4 or 5
keep on
days.
going.
Or,
Yeah.
if
Yeah,
you're
I
out
mean,
in Africa, you can be out there for 8 days.
yeah, well, yeah, mega one. And I mean, I've kind of long thought that, I mean, adventure racing is a mind game as much as anything else. It's an acquisition of skills, but after that, it's a mind. It's a sport that's about the mind.
Mm,
It's can
mm,
you keep going? And actually, you don't need to be, as look, as I'm living proof of, you do not need to be an ultra fit, racing snake athlete, to get something out of this sport. You need a kind of a core level of fitness. I usually say, if you can run a half marathon
yeah,
comfortably, then you can do an adventure race, you can do an expedition race, absolutely. Because after that, it's not about fitness. It's about, can you keep going? Can you be efficient? Can you manage human relationships in a team? Can you remain positive? All those, can you not, can you not make enormous cock ups when you're tired? It's that kind of stuff. It's not fitness
yeah,
or
yeah,
strength or anything like that. It's can you keep going?
yeah,
Have you got the willpower?
yeah, 100%. I definitely think that's it. It becomes more of a mental challenge after 48 hours. You can kind of get through it without the mental necessarily within 24, 36 hours, but the further on you go, it definitely becomes more about the mind than it does about
Yeah,
the
and
fitness.
managing yourself and managing, your relationships with the rest of your team at that
Yeah,
point. I
yeah,
mean, the race in France last year was probably the longest one I've been at. We were out for 6 whole days in the end.
yeah,
And actually, I found that I fell into a pattern. Within a couple of days, we were taking it fairly easy, 2 or 3 hours sleep a night, something like that. So we had a routine, and I reckon, it was fine. It's manageable. I reckon we could have kept going for another week longer. Should
yeah,
have wanted to, but we could have, because you fall into that pattern. It's not. yeah, you look at the enormity of a 4 or 5 day race. It's like it's not really like that. You break it down into manageable chunks
Yeah,
and take each section as it comes, and it's
yeah,
totally doable. It's
yeah,
totally doable.
100%. Just looking back in the two races that I've done with you, Paul, I found them both very enjoyable for two reasons. Obviously, the courses have been really amazing and they're brought us to places that I definitely wouldn't see unless an RG sent me there. They're not something that I would have found out in any book as a visiting tourist to any of the locations. I done the Sarah Helen Way in Wales, about 4 years ago now, and we mountain biked it. My mountain bike backpacked it over a week. And I still saw places after even doing that in ways that I had never seen before.
Yeah.
And it was just absolutely amazing. What I also really liked was the intertwining of the teams. Literally like that. Didn't matter where you were as you were going along. We saw some of the, really fast teams coming through because it almost felt like they were being sent out far to come all the way
They,
back in
yeah, that
and
was.
meet us short coursing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, last year was a really good example of kind of how we approach course planning. So yeah, you're right that if you kind of look on the macro scale, the course drew an enormous series of enormous S bends all the way down, but it was possible to also draw that line with
Mm,
the course. So the long course teams were doing this,
yeah,
meanwhile the short course teams were doing this, and so it was that was the terrain lent itself to that to some degree, but that was absolutely what we were intending. So the way we start planning is that we start with the short course. So ITERA works in a funny kind of way. It's maybe worth just 2 minutes on how ITERA works, because
absolutely.
it's not
Yeah,
like
yeah,
any other. I don't think it's like any other adventure race. So most expedition races, it's follow the dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and off you go. You follow the checkpoints in order for as long as you can until you start hitting timeouts. ITERA's not like that. ITERA works in a different way. Almost all of the checkpoints are optional. There are a few mandatory ones in there, but the mandatory ones are usually for safety reasons or because it's somewhere really, really, really cool that we want you to go to. So loads of them are optional. Almost all of them are optional, but they carry a time penalty. So there's a bit of a strategic choice. Um, is our strength biking? Is our strength kayaking? Is our strength on foot? And you can kind of bias your own race a little bit towards your strengths. But it also means that, a kind of a wide variety of abilities can get something out of the race. They're all still doing the same race. Um, I mean, the way we deal with the classifications is so if you're going to be a long course team, you have to get them all. You have to visit every checkpoint, and you're a long course team. If you miss optional checkpoints, that's fine. We give you that little time penalty just because that's the way we manage it, and you become a short course team. But everyone stays ranked. Everyone stays ranked. So everyone is still, got something to race for. So yeah, we start planning that short course first, and then we add in the long course. Beyond that, we kind of stretch the course one way and the other. And our intention is to do exactly what you've. So it's pleasing to hear you say that.
yeah,
That's absolutely our intention is to have teams quite close together. I mean, it doesn't work that way in practice. We still end up at the end of the race with somebody out front and somebody at the back, of course.
yeah.
But
But
yeah,
it's
our
the
intention.
journey in between. It's
Yeah,
that journey in between, like.
yeah, and there's not days, like I mean, I think I haven't been following that closely, I have to say, but the raid in Morocco, the raid in Bache in Morocco this week, I think it was a 4 day race, but even so, there were a couple of days between front and back. Raid in France, even though we shortcutted at various times, we were still 2 days behind the winners. Doesn't work like that, ITERA. Everybody will finish within the same 24-hour window because of the way we set the course up. And the other thing that I think we do, which I think is a bit unusual, is we really try hard on the quality of transition areas. We try and put a roof over your head. We try and give you hot water. We try and give you access to some facilities. And this is a James Thurlow thing. And he's absolutely spot on that he took the view that those simple kind of bits of facility meant that more teams, particularly those towards the back of the pack, had a chance of finishing. And we are in the business of getting as many teams as we can across the finish line. So we try and support that as best we can. So you'll generally expect decent transition areas. So a variety of village halls and all sorts of bits and pieces. Wherever not always possible. It's sometimes in the remote bits of Scotland there aren't places exactly where you want them. But as a general rule, we are looking to support teams. Basically, we want you to finish.
Yeah. And I think that's really nice, that and you can feel it, like even last year with injuries and stuff like that, everyone managed to finish, and it was an amazing opportunity to say, yeah, you know what I mean, there's no hand holding. If you want to do X, Y, or Z, we'll try and get you to the finish, and that's it, you know
Yeah.
and it's up to the participants as well to comply with that. But it's great. Like, I think, did you? I actually don't even know. Did you have any DNFs last year, or was
There
there?
were there were a couple, not many though, because
Yeah,
in order to get a ranking, all you need to do is link those mandatory, basically go to the transition areas.
yeah,
A bit more than that, but basically all you needed to do was go to the transition areas. There were a couple of DNFs, as I recall. I'd have to go back and have a look at the results list. There
yeah,
were a
yeah.
couple that I think were timed out, or I know there was one injury. There was at least one injury. I know you were as well, but you sorted
Mm,
yourself out
yeah,
impressively. Um, yeah, there was a bike injury as well. So yeah, but not many. Not
yeah,
many. Most
yeah, yeah,
teams finish ranked in some way, shape, or form. Most
yeah.
teams finish ranked. Yeah.
And I think that's really important. It's one of the things that we've spoken about, in relation to going to ITERA and having been over in Holland for the last few years as well, racing over there, that it's so important that every team at least has that opportunity to finish, and that they're not being totally timed out, where they have the opportunity, as you say, even just to hit the mandatories, and then they finish. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter where, but they're still ranked. They're not down as a DNF,
Correct.
considering that they got to the finish line by themselves.
Yeah.
So, and I think that encourages teams to continue and, begin to fight for their positions. And as the years go by, they start to get better and a little bit quicker, possibly too, and more savvy with the navigation. I was even just listening to Team Disability there. They have a podcast, and I was listening to their podcast driving home yesterday, and they were just talking about their first race that they did, and to see how they've done over the last number of years from their first race to now. It's amazing, and it does just give that team that opportunity to finish, which I think is great. And Raid Lowlands would be something similar along those lines as well, Paul, that you're getting that opportunity to get your mandatories and one other point within that leg, and then you can go on.
Okay, that's the way they do it.
Yeah.
We've got several teams from Raid Lowlands racing at ITERA this year, so it's going to be really cool to have them along this year. Looking forward
Yeah,
to that.
yeah. I was talking to Franz. He's one of the organizers' father there, and they're going, "Are you heading over to ITER?" And I said, "Hopefully," but I'm not sure. But he was saying, yeah, they have a good few teams heading
Yeah.
over, and yeah, it'll be great. It'll be
Yeah,
great.
it'd be a lot of fun. It'd be a lot of fun. So yeah, it's encouragement is important. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not easy. None of this is easy. I would never ever claim that ITERA was easy. I would never ever claim it's for everyone. It isn't. Adventure racing isn't. But it is for a wider range of people than you might imagine. And we try and encourage that.
Yeah,
If you can bring some of the skills and some of the fitness, but the right attitude, you'll finish.
yeah,
You will finish. You might learn a lot along the way, but you will finish.
yeah, absolutely. I suppose just to kind of round it off for us, obviously the course has been in planning. Your July this year, I think, around the
August,
end
middle of
August,
August,
middle of
middle of
August.
August. Yeah,
You're kicking off this year. You're for the 5 days for the expedition, and obviously you've the light as well for the 2 days.
yeah.
How has that planning been for you? Are you starting at the start with the short course, in the middle? Have you decided that? Can you talk about
I'm
it?
not telling you.
Ah,
I'm not telling you. It's
okay.
we've ummed and ahed about this Yeah, it was the topic of a lot of conversation and discussion about how we would structure that.
Hmm.
I mean, I can talk to you in terms of the schedule.
Yes.
So long ITERA will start on, I think it's Sunday the 10th of August.
Okay.
So we get that race underway. And then ITERA Lite will start 2 days later.
Okay.
What I'm not telling you is where either of them start,
Okay.
but they do finish. I don't think it's a secret that they finish in the same place. So
Okay.
we've got this great venue. It's a place we have an off-road triathlon. So it's a venue we've known for a long, long time. A place called Baduish. It's an outdoor education center, but it's quite a special one. Its purpose is for kind of getting kids with disabilities into an outdoor environment. It's providing respite. It's providing opportunities and experiences. So it's a really cool little place in a clearing in the forest. This beautiful site, in the shadow of the Cairngorm Mountains. And it's got a load of kind of different accommodations. It's got like chalets and those pod things and
Yeah.
camping space. So we can basically put the entire race up in the same location. So we're kind of hoping that, and the finish is going to be there. So
Okay.
we're hoping that we're going to have a real kind of nice adventure racing kind of community feel there, a bit of a vibe going on, because it'll be us and nobody else. That'll be
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Cool. So it's exciting times ahead, Paul. Um, I wish you all the best for ITERA. I
Yeah.
know you're also coming over to Ireland to race the Beast
Yes, I'll be
in a
there
couple.
in about 3 weeks' time, isn't it? Just
Yeah,
under
yeah,
three
yeah,
weeks.
yeah. Just under 3 weeks now. Um, for us as well, it's been a challenge to get the Beast back up and running. Ivan Parks had managed it for so many years, doing such a brilliant job, and like everything, COVID kind of hit, and we've managed to resurrect it through Adventure Racing Ireland. And Ivan has been amazing, just, giving us some guidance and obviously giving us the banners and stuff like that from the previous
Great.
Beasts. So it's been really good. To have that conversation, and I suppose that helps from him as well. Um, we're really looking forward to getting something a bit bigger back here, which again will in turn obviously work in favor for you, from people getting a bit warmed up and hopefully get a bit of excitement going and get a couple of teams over to the UK.
Yeah.
I know there's a couple already registered in that for ITERA. I suppose for us, it's great. Are you looking forward to coming over
Oh, yeah.
to giving it a bit of a a bash?
I really am, yeah. I love the idea when you kind of told us at ITERA last year that the Beast was back for 2025. It's like, oh, that's fantastic. That's great news.
Yeah,
And so yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm really looking forward to racing in a team of people I don't really know.
yeah,
I like it's quite intense. I quite like that experience. You get to know people, don't you, really
yeah,
quickly in
you
in
do.
this kind of context. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah,
I am really looking forward to it because it's a part of the world I don't know at all. So it's total exploration for me. Every step of the way will be brand new terrain for me. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And it's also a little known fact that I actually hold dual nationality. So I'm also Irish, technically. I mean, clearly I'm not, but you
yes,
know what I mean.
yes. So the
Yeah,
Four
so
Nations Championship is on.
absolutely. We remain eligible. Really, really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great thing. And it's fab to see that happening in Ireland.
Yeah,
It's great to see the ARI kind of going from strength to strength. And we're kind of hoping in the UK that we can follow in those footsteps
yeah.
and build in the same way that you're building.
Yeah, we're very lucky, I suppose. We have a good committee that have organised some of the, shorter team adventure races. So we have a team adventure race series that we have, and they meet up with the solo adventure racing team or solo adventure racing people at the end of the year, and we have a party and a presentation for the winners. So the series is both get a look in there, and I suppose we're just lucky from the solo side, from the adventure racing scene, that we have so many race directors that put on the solo adventure races in terms of obviously you're using a road bike and it's a followed course, but it's still that,
Racing, still
it's
multi-sport
still
racing.
racing. Yeah, exactly. So we're very lucky to have that and have so many race directors putting those on and be able to support two teams here, a team series and a solo series. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're lucky with the committee.
It's beginning to happen in the UK. As I said, there's an embryonic UK association coming together.
Yeah,
There's various folks involved in that, and at an organisational level, I mean, there are a handful of race directors in the UK, and we do all talk to each other, and we do try and coordinate calendars. And I think we've all got a similar kind of view that we need to build a series of events and a variety of events in the UK, but we need to kind of we need to be dragging new people into this sport. Um, because it's amazing, it's life changing. Literally, it's life
yeah,
changing. It's an
yeah.
incredible thing to get involved in. So we're watching what you do over there with a huge amount of interest.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of an appetite coming back for it. I think with Eco Challenge being shown there, and I know you've talked about that race in 2014 with ITERA, that was televised, if I remember rightly. There was a couple of those ITERAs that were televised. I remember watching them. I remember watching that half an hour program at the time. Can't remember what channel it was on now. Could have been Eurosport or something, but
Yeah.
that's a great opportunity to say, gosh, would I ever be able to do that, or whatever the case may be when somebody sees it. So I do think there is an appetite kind of coming back for it now. We can definitely see it with a lot of new people doing the team adventure races. There's an
Oh,
appetite
yeah.
there, and we're definitely seeing more come on board. So hopefully, through word of mouth, we'll get out there a little bit more.
Yeah, and just that exposure, and with this kind of we know there's a bit of a responsibility on us that we know we've got an opportunity, we need to use it
Yeah.
for kind of clearly for our own event, but also kind of for the sport more generally. So we're going to be televised this year. Hooray!
Yay! Yay!
Um, Possibly by two different broadcasters. So we think and we've certainly got S4C who were there last year.
Yeah,
Welsh language, but I think that did end up on various international packages as well, I think. But
yeah, we
we're
saw it.
also
Yeah,
talking to another, I can't name them, another national broadcaster. But I
brilliant,
should find out about that in a week or two's time. But yeah,
brilliant.
we're going to be on telly, at least one.
Yeah, no, and it was brilliant even to see the Welsh one there when they put it out. It was great.
Did a great job, yeah.
Yeah, they did absolutely a great job. Yeah, it was brilliant. Hopefully, we might get televised as well. One never knows.
Well, I
One
believe
never knows.
both of them are going to put in teams of presenters, which will be
Oh
really interesting.
wow!
Which will be really interesting. Oh.
Yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good. They'll
It
definitely
will
know
be.
each other by the end of it anyway.
I believe they certainly will. Yeah. Yeah, they certainly will.
Oh, for sure. I'd like to round it off, Paul. Is there anything that I haven't covered maybe that you'd like to mention or
Don't think so. I think we've kind of, we've covered a lot of ground there.
yeah,
So yeah, no, that's been fun.
yeah. I really appreciate you popping on and hopefully we'll see you in a couple of weeks and we'll be talking to you hopefully over in
Face to
ITERA as
face.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
over a pint of Guinness. That'd be even better.
absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
righty.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Bye bye.